Two Chairs No Waiting, episode number 173, Opie's Kindness. Two Chairs No Waiting is brought to you each week by the wonderful, fine folks over at weaversdepartmentstore.com. I know I say it every week, folks, but please drop by weaversdepartmentstore.com and pick out something that you would love as a Mayberry fan and buy it. Buy it for yourself, buy it for somebody you love. They'd enjoy it. weaversdepartmentstore.com. Two Chairs No Waiting is also brought to you by donations by listeners like you. The executive producer of episode number 173 is John Samino. So thank you, John. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your support. And thank the Mayberry Band. Folks, we spent the last 3 weeks talking about things to do with the Mayberry Band. Last week was the Mayberry Band episode, so if you hadn't heard it, head on back and listen to 172, Freddie Fleet, and you'll find out all kinds of cool things about Freddie. But tonight, oh, I didn't say, did I? I'm Allan Newsome, your host for Two Chairs No Waiting. I'm glad to have you with me. If this is your first episode, it's great to have you with me, and there's lots of stuff for you to go back and listen to, hours and hours of me talking about the Andy Griffith Show, plus some interviews with cast members. So head on back there and give it a shot. I think you'd enjoy a lot of the old episodes of Two Chairs No Waiting, because wow, 173 episodes we are into this show, this podcast series, and it's been a lot of fun. It's hard to believe we're that far along. But tonight's episode is Opie's Kindness. Now, we're going to be talking about this because I started a new website at the first of this year of 2012, is when I'm recording this, called iMayberry Community. Now, some of you folks may not have seen it, but the iMayberry Community, the goal of it there, because there's tons of, a lot of Mayberry-related websites, Andy Griffith Show websites and forums, and there's podcasts and mailing lists and newsletters and just all kinds of stuff that have been on the internet for 20 years. Some of the stuff I've run's been on there for a long time. And I'm still amazed when folks, don't find out or don't know about all these Mayberry things out there. So the goal is with iMayberry Community to kind of centralize some of that stuff, to get a community developed around the Andy Griffith Show, because isn't that what the Andy Griffith Show is really about? Community, friends, family. So that's what iMayberryCommunity.com, that's what it's all about. So I hope you guys, if you haven't been there, go and visit. And if you have been there, come back and visit with your friends, because we've got 220 or 30 folks that are on there right now in a month, less than a month. So we're doing really well and growing. But this podcast was inspired by one of the conversations going on over there, and it's called Opie's Kindness. If you go to the forum over there, there was a comment left back in the middle of January 2012 by John Lane. If you're ever in our chat rooms, he goes by Gomer Barney Floyd, but he left a message. And what he said was, basically it's this. He said, isn't Opie's sincereness a bit too fake sometimes? Like, yes, yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. He said, and John said, I doubt Ronny Howard was that kind in real life. It just sounds a little too fake, like a telemarketer saying, I promise we'll fix it and that sort of thing. Well, that's the sort of thing that he feels like that Opie was doing. And basically what he was doing there was leaving a comment for us to be able to comment about what we thought. I didn't really know how many comments it would get, but that particular comment, is that fake? When you see that on the Andy Griffith Show and you see Opie and you see just how polite he was as a young man, wasn't that just kind of sort of fake, was what John's premise was. Well, we had several comments. We had Albert, he wrote in and said, I would say that's the actor of the boy, which I thought was a very Mayberry comment, because, remember, if you talk different, like different actors would talk like different things, according to Opie. And History Buff wrote in and said, commented on this and said, I've never doubted the sincerity of Opie's character, either his words or his actions, neither of them. I guess that even though I'm a lifelong Yankee, and we forgive you, History Buff, even though I'm a lifelong Yankee, I've always known that politeness and respect for their elders are important parts of Southern children's upbringing. I actually remember being rather startled when Opie addressed Floyd by his first name instead of Mr. Floyd. Another example of the charming, old-fashioned politeness, which is Mr. Floyd or Mr. Allan. At least I get called that sometimes, Mr. Allan. And Sandra Seals, she wrote in and said, I don't think he was insincere at all. Children used to be taught to speak to their elders with respect. With the passage of time, that has kind of died away, and now we hear mouthiness between parents and children, with many parents being worse than their kids. I'd love to see some of that politeness again. Now, my wife wrote in, Jan. She wrote in and said, I was brought up to say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, thank you. My brother and sister and I, we got into trouble for not replying with one of these nice phrases. I've tried to raise Adam, that's our son, the same way, and for the most part, he does pretty good. When I was in college, a lady jumped all over me, according to this, what Jan's saying, for saying yes, ma'am to her. She was only about 15 years older than me. I kindly looked at her and said, if my mom and dad were standing here and I didn't say yes, ma'am to you, then I'd be in trouble. It doesn't matter how old you are and how old, they still expect me to be respectful. It's just one of the things that young people don't understand, kindness and respect to our elders. There's so much disrespect today. Parents need to parent, teach our children to treat others with kindness, show respect and love for one another, instead of expecting everything to be given to them. Well, I was going to say more, but I think I'm starting to get into stuff I shouldn't talk to. That's what Jan said. So, and then lastly, the comment, there's a lot more comments on here. I just kind of picked a few. Tammy Sinclair, she wrote and said, I always got the impression that Opie's politeness was very sincere and sweet, not like character Eddie Haskell from Leave It to Beaver, which was the total opposite. I have to agree. Well, and part of that, referring to Ron Howard and Opie, it made me remember there's a book called, it's called Mayberry, My Hometown, written by Stephen Spiginski. It's Spignesi. That's Stephen. He wrote Mayberry, My Hometown. It's a reference book for the Andy Griffith Show. But while he was writing this, and it was several years back, he went and was able to interview Ron Howard. And I just wanted to read, I'm not going to read the interview to you, but I want to read the beginning of his interview, because he goes and talks just a little bit about his experience in getting to go and interview Ron Howard. He says, so it's a talk with Ron Opie Howard. Ron Howard is an American success story and a Hollywood movie come to life, starting at the age of 4 in The Journey and continuing all the way through his 32-year life up to Return to Mayberry. Ron Howard has been before the cameras growing up. Now he's all grown up and behind the camera, a hotshot hit maker, as Life magazine called him. We, as Andy Griffith Show fans, of course know him and love him as Opie Taylor, the fresh-faced young son of Sheriff Andy Taylor of Mayberry, North Carolina, a role he literally grew up with and one from which he can never be separated. But there's more to Ron Howard than Opie Taylor. He's appeared in the who's who of American television. His credits include episodes of Dobie Gillis, Dennis the Menace, Pete and Gladys, Make Room for Daddy, The Great Adventure, The Smith Family, MASH, and Love American Style. He starred in the Andy Griffith Show for 8 years and Happy Days as Richie Cunningham for 6 years. But he always wanted to direct, and boy, does he now direct. His movie director credits at this time, when this was written, include Grand Theft Auto, which he also starred in and co-wrote with his father, Rance, Skyward, and four hit movies in a row, Night Shift, Splash, Cocoon, and Gung Ho. Since he now lives in my home state of Connecticut, it was a lot easier than you would think to arrange an interview with this incredibly busy director and producer. But there still were hitches. When talking with Ron about when and where to have our talk, I made it clear that I would work with him whenever he had free time. His schedule was paramount, I told him. I could do it evenings, weekends, whatever. No, he told me, to the nights and weekends. And this is him quoting Ron. He said, I prefer to do it on weekdays. Why? because he has another major project in his life, his family. It consists of his lovely wife, Cheryl, and his 3 daughters, 5-year-old Bryce and 1-year-old twins, Jocelyn and Paige. We set it up for me to call him one Thursday morning. And he said, "If I'm not there, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I might not make it back from taking Bryce to school." So he goes on to say, "Here is obviously a man who has his priorities straight, wouldn't you say?" During our interview, I was continually impressed with Ron. He was modest, unassuming, and went out of his way to be accommodating. And this is the part that really I remembered in answering to this question about the kindness of Opie. He says here, in fact, at one point, he apologized to me for putting me through the ringer on this thing. What I was just assuming was to be expected, considering Ron Howard's schedule, he saw as something he should apologize for. Ron is a considerate gentleman, and speaking with him for Mayberry, my hometown, was a joy and an honor. So it goes on, and there's an interview with Ron Howard in this book, and there's one copy available at this time at Weaver's Department Store, so if you want to go and try to pick it up, it's been out of print for a while. But I think you see, just from those comments, just a little bit about Ron Howard's character. His family, and this was several years back because he was only 32 at the time, but his family was extremely important to him. He didn't want to do these interviews on the nights or weekends because he wanted to be home with his family. And just how kind he was to Stephen. Stephen was trying to make every way to make it easy for Ron to be able to do the interview because, Stephen was asking for a favor really to get him to get Ron to be able to have time to do the interview. And Ron Howard, kind of person he was, apologized to Stephen for it being difficult for him to arrange a scheduled time and him being a little late or something getting there. That's the kind of guy I believe Ron Howard is. And that's the kind of guy I believe you see on the Andy Griffith Show as Opie. I believe his dad, his mom, they raised Ronny Howard to be Ron Howard, that man. And I think when he was Ronny Howard, he was the same kind of guy. So anyway, that's my opinion. I'd love to hear yours. If you got some stories you may have written or heard about Ron Howard, I'd love to hear some of that. So feel free. You can go over to the iMayberry community and sign up if you'd like to. iMayberrycommunity.com, and you can leave messages there on that particular forum topic, or you can drop by the podcast on this episode and leave messages there as well. We're not finished, so don't leave me. That's the way I usually end the show, I know, but you can also call me at 888-684-8415. Now, I'm not done, so I hope you didn't leave. I wanted to make a correction. Last week's episode, I kept calling Freddie Fleet Joseph Cirolo. I kept putting an O on the end of it, and I corrected myself during the show, but I just wanted to correct it again. I hate getting people's names wrong, and I do it a lot. His name was Joseph Cirola, Sirola, Cirola. So I just wanted to make sure I corrected that completely, even though I'm sure I said somebody's name wrong tonight too, because that's what I do. So we got a little bit of feedback that we had from the podcast of the last few weeks. And this is from Frank Phillips. Now, this is where we were talking about just some Mayberry things. So let's hear Frank's comment, and I think you're going to enjoy this.
Hey, Allan. This is Frank Phillips from Indiana. I'm out here driving between Brazil and Crawfordsville, as I usually am when I'm listening to you. And I wanted to share my Mayberry-type memories with you. They involve my grandfather. He lived in Winamac, Indiana. Had a chair. I think it was permanently mounted to his front porch because all summer long people would walk by on the sidewalk and they would say, "Hey, Frank, how you doing?" And he'd wave at them and talk to me and everything. And then in the winter, he spent a lot of his winters with us, and he taught me to take a broom straw and he would race box elder bugs with me on the front porch. We had a closed-in front porch that he stayed on a lot of times in the winter time. And I still remember those days of racing those box elder buds with Grandpa. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thanks a lot. Keep up the good work. I sure enjoy your podcast. Bye-bye.
Well, Frank, hey, I appreciate you calling in. You remember times like that with your parents and grandparents sitting out on the porch maybe and just visiting or sitting around playing Monopoly? You know, those kind of memories, I think, is what, the Andy Griffith Show brings back to us. And if they weren't on the Andy Griffith Show, definitely reminds you of things on there. Andy sitting there in the living room reading Ichabod Crane to Opie. Just those kind of moments in your life that I believe watching the Andy Griffith Show and experiencing those are rekindled in our minds and gives us just an escape. I know I'm pushing it, but that's what I want the iMayberry community, which is you guys who listen to this podcast. That's what I want that to be. I want it to be a place where we all gather together, we become closer friends, and develop those relationships that are going to last as friendships our whole life. I think we've had some of that. We already have some of that on the Who's Been Messing Up the Bulletin Board chapter. We got people that have, over the many years I've been running that, have developed really close friendships. We got people that have been on some of the bulletin boards I've run that do that as well. But I'm trying to get us all into one place because right now we got multiple little bulletin boards around and multiple places, little communities around. I'd like to see us gather in one place to develop some of those memories, sit around and talk, visit with one another. And that's what we've been trying to do over there. We've been having chat sessions. So if you guys come there, you'll be able to find out and join with us when we're having a chat night. And we've been doing it every Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern times, when this podcast is recorded. There's I don't even know how many people are in the room tonight. There's 18 right now. I think there were 19 a few minutes ago. So they drop by and they're talking to each other and visiting while we're doing the podcast. Same thing's trying to happen on other nights of the week. And folks, I definitely want to invite you, make a Mayberry in your own life, whether it's online, like I'm encouraging with the iMayberry community, or at your own house. Visit with your friends, visit with your kids, raise your kids like Opie, like Ron Howard, and show all that respect for each other. Because, wow, can you imagine what the world would be like? Could we get there? Man, it'd be great, wouldn't it? We have Mayberry all over the place. Anyway, folks, I'd love to hear from you, hear your thoughts about that. We have got so many great things going on in our lives, and sometimes I think we dwell on the bad ones when we really should dwell on the good ones and grow those, and the bad ones will take care of themselves at some point. Folks, I'd love to hear from you. Call me at 888-684-8415, or you can send me an email at floyd@imayberry.com, or drop by our Facebook page at facebook.com/2chairs, or drop by over here at imayberrycommunity.com. See, so many ways you can get in touch with us. Also, you can go to twochairsnowaiting.com, leave messages there. Folks, until next week, hope you have a great Mayberry week, and we'll see you then on Two Chairs No Waiting. Bye, folks.